As one other warning, I guess, let me emphasize that much as there was no cause for, say, hoarding toilet paper at the beginning of the pandemic, there should be no cause for hoarding gasoline, especially in light of the fact that the pipeline should be substantially operational by the end of this week and over the weekend.
All right. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm is urging calm and asking Americans not to hoard fuel as fears of a gas shortage grow following the weekend's cyber attack on the Colonial Pipeline, which supplies fuel for nearly half of the East Coast and remains out of service. The Washington Post reports 1/5 of the gas stations in Atlanta are out of fuel yesterday. Governors in North Carolina, Georgia, and Virginia declared states of emergency. One analysis showed more than 60% of gas stations in Wilmington, North Carolina, are empty. The pipeline shutdown is affecting air travel as well. American Airlines is adding layovers to several long-distance flights to refuel, and Southwest Airlines is flying in more gas to, quote, supplement the local supply. The Department of Energy is warning that affected areas may not see gas shipments immediately and could, quote, need to rely on inventories or for several days after Colonial Pipeline service is restored. Joining us now, the chairman of the Select Committee on Intelligence, Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. Senator, I'd like, to pull back at 20,000 feet and look at this problem as it pertains to our security. But let's dive in. What have you heard about when full service will be restored? And should people be calm about this and not hoard gas? Because there are conflicting messages here. You have one from Jennifer Granholm, but then you have closed gas stations.
Well, Mika.
And declarations of states of emergency.
Well, one, it shows how vulnerable we are to one pipeline. Two, I talked to friends in North Carolina yesterday. They were seeing gas lines. We didn't see them in Virginia until last night as I was coming home. I started seeing gas lines in Alexandria. I understand people's response. I do think it's my understanding that Colonial Pipeline will be back online by the end of the week. But this is why cyber security needs to be a higher priority for all of us. When the bad guys, and in this case, it was a Russian criminal gang that launched this attack. When the bad guys try to shut down a company's operation, they're going to be ultimately many times successful. So what I most fear from a security standpoint is many of your viewers may remember the so-called SolarWinds attack a few months ago, where Russia got into literally 16,000 companies. They only decided to exfiltrate certain information, classic espionage. If Russia had been inside 16,000 companies and they decided to shut down all those companies the way the hackers have done with Colonial Pipeline, we could have had our whole economy come grinding to a stop. So one of my top priorities is to get, and the good news is this is totally bipartisan. I believe we will have industry support to make sure there is a mandatory reporting period so that if somebody is attacked like this, that's critical infrastructure, both the private sector, the security firms out there, the cloud providers like Microsoft and Amazon, the FBI, Homeland Security, all know that in real time, because right now, even in the case of Colonial Pipeline, it's something that was this critical part of infrastructure. There was no mandatory requirement to report.
Senator, it's Willie Geist. Good to have you on. Yesterday morning, we had Chris Krebs on the show, the former director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And we asked him, how can this happen? And he said, frankly, it could be as simple as this ransomware group, DarkSide, sending an email attachment to an employee at Colonial who opened it and infected the entire system and shut down the gas pipeline. How could that be possible in this day and age that these companies aren't secure enough to prevent something that small from causing something this big?
Well, the so-called, sending the emails are called a phishing exploit. It happens all the time. Companies can improve their cybersecurity, but making your company totally safe, you've got to be, the bad guys only have to try to get in one time. You have to be safe 100% of the time. So Yes, we need greater cyber hygiene, but we also need a response network so that when the bad guys do get in, break through, we can pulse our whole networks and get back in a timely fashion. In the case of Colonial Pipeline, it appears these guys got in, and then immediately or fairly soon launched an attack. In the case of SolarWinds, or the so-called Microsoft Hacknium hack, they were inside our systems for literally months, burrowing further and further in. And if we had not had, in the case of SolarWinds, for example, a private company, Kevin Mandier, FireEye, one of the national security or cybersecurity companies, voluntarily come forward, we might still not have known the facts. So, again, I don't want to scare people in the morning, but if you combine the kind of denial of service, which is the Colonial Pipeline attack, with the expansive supply chain kind of many thousand types of companies being infected, SolarWinds hack, you have the potential for disaster. And right now, we don't even have a way for the good guys, both in the private sector and in the government, to even find out that information. The good news is people realize this in the cyber domain. Krebs is somebody helping me put this legislation together. And I think the time of having that mandatory reporting with appropriate immunity and anonymity, it's time to put that in place.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.